And the topic of today's talk on a part 4, Jesus and We, is ridiculous generosity. Ridiculous generosity. It's there in your notes, and it's going to be good this morning for you. Being a person who is financially generous is a person who puts the actions to words that Paul the apostle shared when he quoted Jesus. In Acts chapter 20, verse 35, it says this: "In everything I did," Paul says, "I showed you by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words of the Lord Jesus himself when he said, 'It is more blessed to give than it is to receive.'" I want to hit you with some probing questions today that you can just maybe jot down, think on, and just ponder on. Probing questions. Probing questions are good questions. Are you a ridiculous financial giver? Some probing questions to think on. Are you? I see where Amy's sitting at. You are sitting in the best spot in the auditorium right there. That is awesome by the fan. It's good. Are you a little warm up there? It's good. It's all right. You should be on the platform. Anyway, so it's good. So are you a ridiculous financial giver? Some probing questions. Does your life overflow with being a person who gives as much money as you can to invest in God's work through your local church? Are you a ridiculous, generous person? Now, before I share some biblical steps, biblical and practical steps, let's expose the elephant in the room right from the beginning. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever been in a situation where you're kind of around some people and it's like there's this undercurrent of maybe concern or this undercurrent of something that's going on? Maybe husbands and wives, those that are married, you probably experience this. Like, the elephant's in the room, right? You got to talk about it. Everybody sees it. You just kind of pretend it's not there. You came home and it's you ever been there before, married couples? The elephant in the room, you know what I'm saying? There's something that it's there, it's causing friction, it's causing conflict, and sometimes the best thing to do is we don't want to talk about it, but we see it, right? And I don't want to talk about it. We pretend it's not there, but the elephant's there. So the elephant in the room, I want to expose so we can actually understand what ridiculous generosity is as followers of Christ, and what Jesus wants us to be and how he wants us to live as Christ followers in the area of finances. I want us to help, but to do that, I have to expose the elephant in the room. Can I do that for you? Thank you. Thank you so much. You might be someone here or watching online right now, and you're kind of angry or can be upset that we're talking about money like this in the church. Right? There are three, to understand why we're talking about this today, there's three common things, Loretta, that most pastors, when somebody wants to meet with me, there's usually around three things, most of the time. There could be more, but it's probably top three points of conversation that most people want to talk about. Number one, help me with my kids. They're driving me crazy. All right? Number two, help me with my husband. He's driving me crazy, all right? Number three, help me with my money. I don't have enough of it, right? So usually three topics of pastoral conversations or counseling appointments are usually, those three things are tied in. Usually those topics come up. Man, I got money problems, I got marriage problems, and I got some kid problems. Okay, but the fascinating thing is when you bring those topics up in a church gathering, usually that's where you get the most pushback. Don't talk about my money, don't talk about my kids, and stay out of my marriage. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, y'all are sitting there quiet as can be today because I've met with half of you already. So anyways, it's good, right? But that's usually what it is. And so we'll have a gathering like this, and people sit stone-faced, and I don't know, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And the reason we talk about money, and you talk about marriage, and you talk about your kids, the reason it makes you uncomfortable is most likely one of those three is an area that you're struggling in. So when it starts to be exposed, when you start talking about it, the elephant pops up. And we don't want to shoot the elephant. We want to shoot the pastor. Stop talking about it, man. Okay, and then this is usually what happens after we have a series on money or marriage. We're having a series on relationships starting September 11th. It's going to be great. And shameless plug. And so usually what happens when we start talking about this about the second week, I start getting phone calls or emails and text messages. Hey, can we meet? Why? Because these are three important areas of our lives. Right? Okay. So, let's call it what it is. Sometimes we can be sensitive of the subject, and you don't like it. I don't want you to talk about money. I don't want you to talk about marriage. And I don't want you to talk about my kids. But really, deep down inside, I want you to. I want someone to be open and honest and not have shame and blame, but let's talk about it. Is that cool today? We do that. Doesn't matter. I won't talk about it anyways. The reason that we can struggle in the area when we talk about finances and giving ridiculous generosity through your local church is it could be an indication of a scarcity mindset. And in a moment, I'm going to share what a scarcity mindset looks like. And maybe I've been there. It's got exposed in my life around 1996, 1997, around there. Some would call it a poverty mindset. You can have a poverty mindset or a scarcity mindset and be raised in wealth and affluence. You can have a scarcity mindset and a poverty mindset and be raised with nothing, like I was, right? So I'm going to help us get some biblical, practical views on finances. So to do that, I want you to think about your finances. I want you to think about your finances as a blessing from God, not just produced from your hard work. I want you to think about my finances as a blessing from God, not just produced by my hard work. Everything that you have comes from Him. And that sounds great, and we can amen that all day long. Yes, I agree with that. And yet when you start talking about money, nah, man. Now, it's my hard work. It's my hard work, Pastor Jared. I got this because I worked for it. Well, and you do. Why did you get the job, but the guy not next to you get the job? See, everything that you have comes from God. And you have to learn how to work what you got, friend, or you'll be stuck, many of us, in a scarcity mindset. Hello? We're going to expose it today. It's going to be awesome. My hope is to encourage all of us, if you're a follower of Jesus, to become a ridiculous, generous giver, because you don't have to be a Christian to be a person who gives ridiculously and generous. Do you understand that? You see, you don't have to be a Christian to be a person that is generous in your giving and generous in your sharing. You don't have to be a Christian to be like that. But I tell you what, if you are a Christian, I believe you should be over the top generous with what God has trusted you with. See, you don't have to be a Christian to be a very generous financial person. But let me tell you, if you are a Christian, you should be. Hello? All right. So how do I become ridiculously generous? How do I become that? How do I get there? So I first must identify if I have a scarcity mindset or an abundant mindset. I first have to identify, do I have a scarcity viewpoint of life or an abundant viewpoint of life? Okay? Now that's very easy to determine. It's very simple to determine if I have a poverty mentality or a rich mentality. If I have a scarcity mentality or an abundant mentality. It is very easy to identify. I'm going to help you identify it today, right? To do that, it's going to take some very honest self-evaluation, okay? You could be a person that gives $10,000 a month to your local church and still be bound in a scarcity mindset. You could be a person that gives $50 a month to your local church, to the work of God's ministry, and you could have a abundant mindset. It's never connected to the amount of money. It's connected to the heart behind it. Can I help you? Right? And it will affect everything in your life. A mindset of scarcity or a mindset of abundance. Someone who has a scarcity mindset. I want you to think on this. This is a probing questions. I want us to think. We need to think more, right? We have to think. Someone who has a scarcity mindset could possibly believe there's simply not enough to go around. There's always going to be lack. It's based really in fear, right? It's like have you ever eaten a pie before? A pie. Have you ever had a pie? Never in your entire life. I know it. A pie. And you get a pie, and that pie is going to yield 8 slices. But we know we always have a grandmama will come and get you 16 slices out of that pie. Right? And she comes, and grandmama comes, and she gets the pie. And she cut, and you're like, I want a bigger piece, right? And grandmama says, no. You are a... Anyways, we cut that thing up, and pretty soon, can I get 32 slices out of that? You try to cut it. And that's how, if we look at life in abundance and finances, if we look at our life that way, that it should be 8 pieces, but now we get it down to 32 slices, but eventually you're going to run out. So I got to get mine. That's how I grew up talking. I got to get mine. Right? Whether you're from the city, or you're from the country, you're from the urban, or you're from the suburbs, I got to get mine. Right? So I'm going to help expose some thinking for us today. Do I have a scarcity or an abundant mindset? Someone with an abundant mindset believes there's always more. If I have an abundant mindset, I believe there's always more. And when we look at it from a faith perspective, we serve an abundant, powerful God. And he desires to bless you. Right? And he always provides. What I want to do today is talk about one of the values that we have as a church community. And I believe that every person that has said yes to Jesus, I believe this should be a value in your life called ridiculous generosity. It should be a value. You should work hard, save hard, vacation hard, and give generously through your local church to the work of God hard. You should, as a follower of Jesus, okay? So I want to start real quick teaching out of the book of Corinthians. Let me give you some backstory behind this. Paul was trying to inspire the Corinthians here in chapter 2, 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Paul was trying to inspire the Corinthians to give financially to the Jerusalem church. He's being a good pastor. Pastor Paul's teaching. He was telling the Corinthians about a group of people known as the Macedonians. The reason the Macedonians, I'm giving you some context, a little backstory, right? The reason the Macedonians were so impactful to Paul is because they were dirt poor. They were living in deep poverty, and the Macedonians gave this massive financial gift, and Paul's doing what? In 2 Corinthians 8, he was bragging on him. Have you ever been bragged on before? You probably brag on your kids. You go to the soccer game, and little 3-year-old Johnny's kicking that soccer ball. Oh, my gosh. He's like, oh, that's the next Pele. Because I don't know any of the next. I don't watch soccer, right? Or how about wrestling? I'm a wrestler. That's the next Jordan Burroughs. You know, you're over here at Kelso at the youth tournament, and your kid's the next Jordan Burroughs. You're like, yeah, he's not, but you're bragging on him anyways. Right? How many of you like to be bragged on? You go to work, and your boss, your employer comes up to you and says, man, and you walk by the employee. I just kind of roll with this, right? You walk by the break room. You got a break room in your job, and you hear your boss doing what? Bragging on you. That's what Paul is doing. He's bragging on these guys. 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 2. In the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability, entirely on their own. They urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in the service to the Lord's people. And they exceeded our expectations. They gave themselves first of all to the Lord. Can I help you with something? Can I give you a little segue thought? Can I just give you something real quick? You can be a yes to Jesus person, but haven't really given yourself fully to the Lord yet. Right? You can be a yes to Jesus person. I said yes to Jesus. I'm going to the sweet by and by, however that looks, right? I can be a yes to Jesus person, but I haven't yielded my whole life to him as the leader of my life, right? That's called you're being transformed. You're changing. Things are happening in your life. And what happens in some church communities, you end up doing is you create a culture of shame and blame because like, hey, quite frankly, Loretta, you're not moving fast enough. So you create a culture in your church that you make people go faster, right, Dan? See, I know some of these guys, so I know their backgrounds. Right? You're not making Jesus leader of your life fast enough, Loretta. All right? You can say yes to Jesus, but he's not Lord and leader of your life yet. And for some of us, that's simply going to take some time. Right? They gave themselves first of all to the Lord, and by the will of God, able to us. And then by the will, they gave to themselves to the Lord to them as well. So we urge Titus, one of his young pastors, just as he had earlier made a beginning, to bring also to completion this act of grace on your part. So they're asking Titus, okay, we want you guys, we want Macedonia to do the same thing. But since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, and knowledge, man, these are great things to excel in, right? In faith, in speech, and knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you excel in the grace of giving. Paul says, in the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty, their joy, overflowing joy, and their experience and their what? Extreme poverty produced what? Rich generosity. Grabbed his attention. And Paul is astonished. Paul's so he's astonished at their response because they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability, and it was entirely on their own accord. What do you mean by that? Jared, what do you mean by that? They weren't whipping the people to get them to be generous with what God has given them. Right? They actually wanted to give ridiculously to a church community in need. They wanted to do it. Something on the inside says, I want to be a part of this. So let me ask you another probing question. When was the last time that you gave as much as you were able and maybe even pushed it beyond that? Jesus follower. Yes to Jesus people. No yes to Jesus people, you're cool. Just chill here and smile, right? But yes to Jesus people. When was the last time that you gave financially as much as you were able and maybe even pushed it beyond that? Man, that is how you think how I felt writing this stuff? I'm like, right? Because it's deeply heart-searching, right? And Paul continued. He loved it that they were urging. They were pleading. They wanted to give. And it blew Paul away. I believe, just me personally, that every follower of Jesus should be a ridiculous, generous giver. Right? To do that, it's going to stretch you to investigate your heart. It's going to be a person that somebody goes, not that you're trying to do this, but to be a person that is ridiculously generous, that grabs the attention of people. Now we hear like, man, if so-and-so, I just wish so-and-so would become part of our church, so because so-and-so is a rich guy. And if he came to our church, I'm sure at least he'd give half his money. Or maybe even more. I just want 1% of it. Yeah, it's not going to happen, friend. If you're a person here today and giving 2% of your income is a stretch, you're not going to give 10% tomorrow. I can tell you that right now. If you're a person here and you give 10% of your income to the work of God, and that's stretching me. You're not going to give 28% tomorrow. If you're a person here today, you've never given $1 to the church consistently, to the work of God. They expect you to give X, Y, and Z. This is not even. Right? It doesn't even make sense. But it's going to do is stretch you to become a ridiculously generous person that works hard, saves hard, and gives hard. It's going to force you to investigate your heart. How do you investigate your heart? That would be the question I would ask. So how do I do that? I want to tell you how you do it. You investigate your bank statements. You know what a bank statement is? Right. You investigate your bank statements, and you discover what has your heart. You will. You discover it. Now, I'm not talking about your mortgage payment. I'm not talking about your savings for retirement. I'm talking about you investigate your bank statements, and you start looking at stuff like, oh. I told my wife, the minute my entertainment fund, the minute things that I like to do, and I like to buy, the day that surpasses the amount of money I get to my local church, I need to make some radical changes. So that's the beauty of having a no shame, no blame culture. It's up to you to investigate your heart by investigating your bank statements. See how easy that is? I mean, it's easy. No big deal, right, Dan? It's not a big deal. Financial giving that is ridiculous breaks the stronghold of fear of not having enough and shifts you to walk by faith as God your provider and walk by wisdom in making financial decisions. You work hard, to save hard, to give hard, to play hard, right? Usually most of us, maybe not you guys, the people online watching right now, they work hard to play hard. They work hard to play hard. That's the world system. And I work hard to play hard, and because I don't really make enough money, I go into debt so I can look like I can play hard. I can't really afford the $50,000 truck, but I get it anyways because my buddy has one. You know, I make $38 an hour. Surely I deserve, right? And so then what ends up, I'm seeing a lot of faces a little concerned. Why? Because remember what I said, when you start talking about money, you start talking about families, you start talking about kids, you get people's attention. So and what happens is because we're leveraged so deeply, the minute you go to your church, and people want it, I think, yes, Jesus people want to give. I believe that. I think people who have born again, they have a new spirit in them, a new heart, they want to, but then how do I do this? Because I've leveraged my life too tightly. And to be a person that could work hard, maybe save hard, and give hard, I might not be able to play as hard as I want to. And that bothers people. See how easy that is? That's beautiful. That's wonderful. That helps us to do what? Take control of our own lives, to take control of our own destiny, and reach the potential that's inside of us already. I love what Bishop T.D. Jakes said one time. You have an appearance of wealth, but you really have nothing. Ow, that's not very nice. But that's the American dream. And then we blame everybody else. No blame around here. So I'm going to give you 3 action steps. Just 3 action steps that's going to help us to think on this. Is that all right? 3 action steps. How do I become ridiculously generous? I'm going to build these 3 action steps off of one verse. Isaiah chapter 32, verse 8 says this, but generous people plan to do what is generous, and they stand firm in their generosity. I'm using the New Living Translation there. But generous people plan to do what is generous. Write that down, online people, all right? And they stand firm in their generosity. So number 1 action plan in your program. Number 1 action plan, make a plan. Make a plan. You got to make a plan. Make a plan of how much you're going to give financially to invest in the work of God through your church. You can pick a percentage from 1% all the way to 100% and give that percentage every time. I personally believe 10% is a good starting point, right? If you understand Old Covenant theology, Old Covenant teaching on the tithe that a lot of churches use, some of it gets a little strange. But the least in the law, under law, the very least was 10%. Under grace, many people under grace think, well. No. What is grace based on? Grace is not based on the law. Grace is based on love. And what's so beautiful about the message of grace is it makes you and it forces you to do what? Investigate your heart. And when you love Jesus and you love people and you love the work of God, you'll find how much easy that law thing doesn't. You don't even need it because we're not under law anymore. We're under grace. Hello. Number 2 action step. So number 1 action step, make a plan. Number 2 action step, stick to the plan. Number 2 action step, stick to the plan. Stick to the plan and stand firm because you will be tested. Make a plan. How many Yes Jesus people in this room today, you have never made a plan on financial giving through your local church? Number 1 you got to do is make a plan. Number 2, how many of you have a savings plan? No, I got a debt plan. Right? Hey, I've been there. I'm not there anymore. I'll never go back there. I don't care how much I want that brand new Corvette. I don't, because I'm a Ford guy. That's the way it is. All right? Don't want no Corvette. But I want me that Super Snake Mustang, all 600 horsepower of it. So we built my own for cheaper. So, we might have a debt plan. How many have a debt reduction plan? Let me help you with a debt reduction plan. Don't get in debt in the first place. But you can't buy a house without going in debt, right? Well, maybe not. Nowadays, kind of tough. Make a plan, a savings plan. Make a plan, a generosity plan. Make a plan, a debt reduction plan. You know what that's going to take? Heart investigation. You're going to have to investigate. You're going to have to what? Stick to the plan and stand firm. You will be tested. Number 1, make a plan. Number 2, stick to the plan. Number 3, do the plan. Number 1, make the plan. Number 2, stick to the plan. Number 3, action step, do the plan. You can't stick to a plan you don't put action to. You know how many people I talked about? I want to be this. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. Man, I want to be a preacher someday, Pastor Jared. I mean, that's the only thing that they talk to me about. If you want to talk about business, I'm going to send you to one of the business people in the church. Go talk to that person. But if you want to be a preacher and a teacher, they want to come talk to me. Okay, well, how much do you read the Bible? Look, friend. What do you? I've always wanted to do this. So what are you doing to get there? So you got to make a plan. You got to stick to the plan. Put action to the plan. What does that look like? You have to do the plan, whatever that plan may be for your life. You can have all kinds of dreams and desires, and you can even plan it. But until you actually do it, it's just a good idea. And many ideas never see accomplished because we are too afraid to take a risk. You want to know some of the most miserable people are? Some of the most miserable people I get around are people who want to do what I'm doing, but they'll never take action to do it. That's just in my world, right? Because they won't take a risk, and when fear stops you, it stops you from reaching the potential you have within you. If you allow fear to stop you, sometimes we call wisdom, well, I'm just being wise. I'm just being wise. Now, many times that's not wisdom. That's fear stopping you. Make a plan. Stick to the plan. Do the plan. When I allow fear to stop me, many times that's a good indication that I've bought into a scarcity mindset. Right? How do I break a scarcity mindset? I have to first take the steps of investigating my heart. In the area of financial giving, the greatest way to do that is being an honest evaluation. Get out your bank statements. Start going through them and looking at them, and you will find out where your heart is. Jesus said in Matthew 6, where your treasure is, that is where your heart is. Right? I remember the first time, I prayed this prayer once, years ago, around April of 1996, May of 1996. I prayed this prayer. I said, Jesus, I want to be a massive, I just want to bless people. You know, I had nothing. I was a new Christian. You know, I was a baby Christian, zealous baby Christian. I want to be a massive giver. And it wasn't too long after that, I was tested in that. And I was in a gathering like this, and I felt the Lord's like, I want you to give $1,000. Now, for you guys, some of you guys, $1,000 is nothing. I'll give you $1,000. Here's $1,000. Great. Right? For me, back then, 1996, $1,000 was everything I had in my savings account, and I knew it. So I gave it all away, $1,000 in that offering. Sweating like a... I've done that. I've given away my savings. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying what I've done 3 times. 3 times on this journey of faith, I've given away everything in my savings account. I want you to think about your savings account. You look at me like, I'm not giving my savings account away. I'm not saying to do that. But I want you to think about it. Are you a ridiculous, generous person? Only you know. Only you know. You know what really who knows too? The world around you. Because God will pour out blessing and finances through your life to touch the world.